Hey, I'm Stephen Glosser.
And I'm Megan Pikert.
Welcome to the Going Somewhere podcast,
a podcast for anyone who finds themselves in the ambiguous adventure of young adulthood.
A season that's marked by uncertainty, change, love, heartbreak, and a whole lot of big decisions.
Join us for some real conversations as we dig into what it looks like to be a follower of Jesus in this beautiful yet complicated season of life.
We're so glad you're here, and we'd love to have you join our little Going Somewhere podcast community. Follow us on Instagram at goingsomewhere.podcast and join the conversation.
We're all going somewhere. We might as well go there together.
Thanks for listening. Let's jump into today's episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of the Going Somewhere podcast. We are in episode 71. Can you believe it, Megan?
Crazy. We've recorded a ton this year, I feel like.
I know. We're on a roll. It's a little like hidden goal that isn't hidden anymore. We're trying to have 100 episodes by the end of 2025. And we have like an 8-week wiggle room. So we're crushing it. Way to go, Megan.
Thank you so much. I feel like I'm bringing organization a little bit to this podcast. Some consistency.
Yeah, there's weeks that I'm like, oh, we're not going to do one. And then you're like, hey, I scheduled a podcast episode for Thursday. I'm like, yes, way to go. So yeah, I appreciate it. We're a great team. This is awesome.
Today, we're going to jump into our episode. We're talking about core values. We're talking about, just how to build a strong foundation. What are they? How do we live by some values in our life? But first question is what are core values?
I think, I'm pumped about this episode, by the way. But core values are really fundamental beliefs, principles, or guiding standards that shape our behavior, decision-making, and overall approach to life. It's maybe more of like a textbook answer, but I think really they're kind of like a compass that provide direction for us and clarity for us. And, I've really viewed core values as kind of, they are the through stream in our lives, especially when we do this activity the right way, when we're not just picking aspirational values like kindness and you're just a jerk, but they're values that are inward, that God's really wired us for. Our values are going to be different. There's always going to be things that are the same. But core values to me are really what represent what's most important to a person or to an organization. And that's why I think I get really excited about this conversation, is because the idea of a person sitting down to determine what's most important to them is something that most people never do in their life. And when you determine what's most important to you, other people can't tell you what's most important. So you live by values instead of the opinions of others and the expectations of others. You really, core values allow you to stay focused on who you are, who God's called you to be, and what the priorities are in your life. What would you add to that or take away from that?
Yeah, I think for me, a lot of my life, the short life that I've lived,
so much of
it, I've had a lot of experiences, but I used to think that you just became who you were with no intentionality. You became who you wanted to be. Like you wanted to be kind, so you were kind. You wanted to be joyful, so you were joyful. But I don't think that's necessarily the case. And I think core values taught me that you have things that you already value. And so it's a matter of what are those things and where are your priorities? And if you want to be a joyful person, how are you going to grow in that?
Yeah.
It might not come naturally to you. Or I have a friend who one of her core values is stewardship. But she's like, that didn't necessarily come naturally. It was something that I wanted to value. And therefore, because I made it a value, I became more intentional with it. And so I think sometimes we just assume that we'll be the person that we want to be and lack the intentionality to grow in it and to identify some things early on so you know where you want to head and the direction you want to go.
Yeah. I think that's really good. I think when I think of core values too, I go to some of my favorite companies and brands and stuff. You think of Chick-fil-A and the whole idea of my pleasure and service and hospitality. And you think of whether it's different restaurants or coffee shops, like the core values of Starbucks are in community. And there's also, they tried to save turtles and stuff. So like there's core values that are obvious in the sense of how you're treated, how you feel in a place. Mm-hmm. And then there's other values that are maybe more hidden, but they really drive. So for Starbucks, that idea can drive the decisions of what products they use, and it drives the decisions of what their environments look like, feel like, what it smells like. There was a book called The Starbucks Experience that I read, and it was really just about their culture, values. And one of the things that it talked about was how they started baking things in the coffee shops. And what ended up happening is that the smell of the pastries overtook the smell of the coffee. And what it really took away from was something that they valued more. Is we are a coffee shop that, you walk in and it smells like a coffee shop. So they chose to build these ovens that basically concealed the smell. And, it's crazy but they basically invented a product so that their store would smell the way that they wanted to smell. So I think when you get into like the weeds with core values, not everybody, and I think another thing is it's very obvious when somebody or an organization is not living according to those values. Mm-hmm. When your values are kindness and the barista treats you like you're not a human, it's like, wait a second, like, aren't you supposed to be that? And so I think that's why in a family, in an organization, core values can also help you, like, not manage behavior, but really help people become a part of that. So family values to me are really cool because when I discipline my kids, it's not as much like, hey, you did the wrong thing. It's like, Glazers are kind. And was that a kind thing to do? Are you living, and this isn't how we do it now, but like, are you living according to our values? You're outside of who we're created to be. And it becomes more of like, I'm not who I am, or like, I'm not who I'm called to be, rather than I'm a bad kid. And so I think there's so many perks to this, and that's why I love talking about it. And I know it was our conversation with Matt that came out last week that really sparked during that episode, we're like, all right, the next one we're doing, we know it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I was introduced to core values one time when I was over at your house for the first time, when you said that exact line of Glazers are kind. And I was like, what? I was like, what a way to discipline. Like, there's no, like, there wasn't fear. It was just like, hey, remember where you come from and what you stand for and what you're called to do. And that was like the first introduction I had of, I should get some core values. I should know, like, Megan Pikert is this,
Yeah.
and live up to that standard that I set for myself. So, but
what's that experience been like for you? Because obviously in this episode, what we're going to do is we're going to help people build this. We're going to actually give some practical steps, and we're going to walk through a process of how to do that. But like, what's that been like for you, just big picture, holistically?
Yeah, I did the activity that we will talk about, and that's really how I narrowed down my core values. I think I approached it initially with like, what is like my dream life? Like, who do I hope to be? And which was good and had good intentions, but I had to come back to, but what is core to me? Like, who I am as a person. And I can have all these dreams and aspirations. Let me like pull a word from the list I have here too of just like maybe, okay, one, for example, hospitality doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. And so that was originally a value that I had on my list, that I was like, I want to be hospitable wherever I go. But I just realized, I'm like, that's something that I changed it to intentionality, because intentionality is how I live every day already. And so if I can capitalize that on a core value, that is already core to who I am. And so I kind of had to navigate that of, just because other things, it's really great to be hospitable, but I also wanted things that uniquely made me who I am and the way that God created me to interact with other people and to live my life.
Yeah.
And not feel, because I think if I would have put hospitality as a core value, I would have really struggled with feeling like I'm not living up to that. And so that was the reason why I took it off the list. Not that I'm not a hospitable person. I'm sounding like I'm not a very good host, but
I think that's the thing. That's the difference between values and morals and core values. Like, even just like some examples, if somebody's wondering like, what is a core value? It's like integrity, respect, responsibility, compassion, perseverance, honesty, fairness, courage. I like pulling them from like the Bible, so love, faith, humility, forgiveness. There's all of these values that you look through scripture, or just in just practicality, like those are good things to emulate. And I think we should aim at those things, the fruit of the Spirit, those could be good values, but at the same time, like, what are the core values? Like, what are the things that are most important, that are more defining? And it doesn't mean that you're not the other things. So I think for you, it's like, yeah, you are hospitable. Like, that is something that I think you are better at it than you probably think you are. But at the same time, there's other values that rank higher. So like, what's one or two of them? I know we're going to get to that later, but what are one or two of your values, just to give a taste, a little flavor for people?
Yeah. So a couple of them that I wrote down. One, intentional. I talked about that a little bit, but also stewardship is another one of my values. I just time, talent, and treasure. I want to be a steward of everything. I don't want to do things just to do them, but also recognize, kind of have that higher, bigger picture of the way that the Lord has blessed me and the way that I can use my life through that. And then another one of my values is curiosity. I love to learn things. I love not knowing, which is actually like kind of weird, but I love the idea of learning and getting to read books and courses and being around mentors. And so that's something that I want to always be a part of my life, and something that I value is that I never feel like I'm done. I never feel like I've arrived in knowing everything I possibly could about something. I want to stay humble enough to remain curious. So those are my
That's
values.
cool.
But where did this start for you? How did you come up with core values for yourself? What was that? What did that look like for you?
Yeah, I've kind of, I mean, ever since probably I was in my early 20s, organizational leadership and personal growth stuff kind of gripped me. I mean, I feel like the version that I'm in now is a refined version where I feel like it has its place in my life. And, but I was kind of obsessed with it. Like, it was way more natural for me to read a personal growth book than any other thing. And so I read this book early in our marriage, and it was called How to Train Your Brain for Success. So that probably gives you a little bit of indication where I was at. And one of the activities was core values. It was like setting priorities, and actually part of the thing we're going to go through at the end, it provided a word bank, and then it kind of walked through this step by step of how to go about this word bank. And that's what we're going to give everybody in the show notes today. But I did that on a long drive to Montana. We were going skiing, and people were having conversations, listening to music, reading books. There was like 5 of us in a minivan, and I just like cranked this out, and I just thought about my life, and I prayed about it, and I would ask Taylor, like, what do you think about this? And it just kind of landed on this list, and it's 7. I think core values is probably better with 4 or 5, but I landed on 7, so I say 4 to 7. And it starts with being Jesus centered, and then family focused, people driven, authentic, teachable, joyful, and passionate. And so all of those things just felt like those jumped out at me, and they all have different significance in different ways. But like, family focused is one that before, and it's become a filter for my life. So before I like to do different things. I love playing sports. I love playing softball. I love playing basketball. But the lens that's higher than people driven or passionate or any of those other things is family focused and ultimately Jesus centered. So I run it through that of like, that doesn't mean I'd never hang out with my friends. It actually means, is my family taken care of? Do we have a plan? Is it intentional? Is this something that's going to feed everybody? And so it's been a really cool process. I haven't necessarily ever gone back to refine them. I feel like the 7 are still very, very much the 7, but maybe there's a few that have kind of trickled in, and I could maybe see if I were to sit down and do this again, maybe those would be there. But yeah, so that's kind of the thing. So let's actually dive into this of like, first thing is, why are core values important?
Yeah, I mean, they're important for a lot of reasons. I think they're extremely foundational to who you are, and they provide just a way to make decisions that reflect the kind of person that you want to be and the kind of person that God has called you to be. And so they can be a really kind of guidepost for you as you make decisions. They're the framework and filter that you run things through, and just how you keep the main things for yourself. And yeah, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that first thing, that first reason, the first why is that they guide decision making. You know, like you just said, that it helps you run every decision through a filter. So I've even said like every opportunity, you know, if there's an opportunity that doesn't feel like me and it feels like I'd have to be an imposter to do it, I'm going to say no to that. So that's something that's come up in, I've gotten to MC a couple like nonprofit events. And the thing that I'm feeling out is, one, do I care about the organization? Do I have to fake it? Like, I don't want to do things that I like actually don't believe in this, or I don't agree with this or whatever. So that wouldn't be authentic to me. But also, can I be myself when I'm up there? And of course, if I have to wear a suit, I'll wear the suit. If I have to, you know, like there's different settings but can I be myself at the end of the day? Can I interject humor into this thing? Can I, you know, go with the flow and feel it out and not feel like I have to stick to a script? Like there's just opportunities that are like, that just doesn't feel like me. So I think that guiding decision-making is probably one of the biggest reasons why they're important. What's another reason they're important?
Yeah, they align your life with God's will. And so first and foremost, we serve the Lord and his agenda and his
Shout
will
out
for our
Lord.
lives. Shout out Lord. But yeah, it helps us stay in line with, I'm sorry, I'm also laughing because there's a singer.
Yeah, I know. Not you,
Not
the
you,
Lord.
sorry. But yeah, it helps us remain just Christ-centered and Christ-focused as well. And help us live out the Great Commission and the things that he's called us to do, the plans he has for us. And so, yeah, I think they just provide a foundation for us in our Christian faith as well.
Yeah, and I think that's the cool thing about aligning them with God's word. It allows our life to be aligned with his word and his will and reflect like the character of Jesus too. So I think as a Christian, you do not have to have the fruit of the Spirit be your core values. But I think when we are searching out this exercise and we're trying to determine what's most important to us, at the end of the day, it has to be God. It has to be the things of God. It has to be, you know, whether it's being outwardly focused to reach lost people, it has to be, those things have to be in the mix. And so not that those have to be the core values, but it allows us to align with his will, his purpose, and his way for our life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We have a couple other reasons why they're important. So do you just want to run through some other reasons?
Yeah. I mean, I think one or three, I would say it provides a firm foundation. You know, like it says in Matthew 7, it says that, or I mean, Jesus really talks about building your house on a rock. And I think when your values are secure, it creates that firm foundation. Like, this is who I am. This is who God's called me to be. This is how I'm aligned with him. And so it definitely allows that to become the solid rock. What's another one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another one is it creates a sense of purpose. So core values clarify what motivates you and what drives you as a person. So kind of going back to the decision making, it's the filter that you're going to make decisions through, but it also gives you a sense of I know where I want to go and I know the kind of person I want to be when I get there as well. You want to hit the last one?
Yeah. The fifth thing is that it improves resilience, that core values can act as an anchor. They help us really maintain focus and perseverance, providing strength to overcome like the tough stuff in our life and to remain true to ourselves, so that when we are in the middle of a storm, you know, when we are really dealing with something that's just hard to deal with. So for me, like, joyful is not just like a happy go lucky joy. To me, joy is biblical. It's the whole idea of what James 1 says, consider it pure joy when you face trials of many kinds, because that trial leads to endurance and perseverance, you know, all those things. And so to me, joy isn't just like all the things in your life are going great, so you're happy. Joy is so much greater than that. And so for me in a hard time, it's like, how can I be joyful in this? Like, how can I continue to pursue joy through Jesus in this trial, or things that are when it's hard about, whether it's like financial stuff and there's just different things going on. It's like family focus. So I'm not going to do the thing that drives me away from my family. And that's just something for me. It's like money is not greater than my family. Like, pursuing an opportunity at the expense of my family is not on the table. That's why for Taylor and I having our values really locked in, I've gotten to do some really fun things. And we moved across the country, and that was the debate, was like, is uplifting our family and moving us out of comfort and away from our the grandparents and all that stuff. But we really felt like a conviction to know this is what the Lord has for us. And it drew us together in that time. So I think it improves resilience too. There's other things. It strengthens relationships and all those things too. But I would say those are some of the ones that stand out. And so I think what we want to do next is kind of holistically, we're going to do an activity at the very end. Like we have it in the show notes that people can go through on their own time. We're going to kind of walk through that. But right now, let's just talk a little bit holistic. Like, how do you develop core values? Somebody's listening to this. They're in their car. They're driving. They're working out. I don't know what else you do when you listen to this, but you're doing that and you're like, okay, that sounds great. I feel like core values are a good thing to have. What do I do next?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For me, kind of the first way of how to develop is to reflect on past experiences for you. And that was a huge part of how I developed mine, was looking back at what has been a motivator for me in the past when I've made really good decisions or when I felt confident in different seasons of my life. And that was just reflecting on kind of those pivotal moments for me. How did I wish I would have done those different? How do I appreciate the way that I handled it in the moment? But what values guide your actions or influence your decisions during those times? And so that's just kind of a reflection on your whole life up until this point. What experiences have shaped you? What has molded you? And what values have carried you up to this point?
I think on top of that too, the family of origin, who you grow up with, some of those experiences can shape you, or close family members. I just think of, there's families that I know of that are just fun. Like that is just, you go into their house and it's fun. And, it's very common that the kids are fun. So like Luke Saunders, one of my best friends, I lived with him in college for a couple of years. Going to his house was a party, like ping pong table. We'd stay up late. We'd play games. His mom and dad are playing the games with us. We're laughing. Luke is one of the most fun loving people ever. Like when you go to his house now, like that's what his environment is. And so it's so obvious to see that, like I don't know if he's ever done this, but one of his core values is fun, but that came from his family. So when you reflect on those experiences in your life, those can kind of come to the surface. And some people go through really hard times and really hard things. And so resilience and perseverance or grit and just that persistence to keep going when it's hard could be a core value to that person because of what they grew up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. How else can we develop core values?
Second thing I think we can do is identify personal priorities. And so thinking about what matters most in our life, like what principles guide your behavior in those areas of your life. So just what is most important. And a person, of faith is most likely going to say God. It's going to say they're going to say the relationship with Jesus. And I don't believe everybody has to have a faith, perspective, or like a faith, like my first value is Jesus centered. I am Jesus centered. You don't have to do that. That could be the given. That's just like the blanket over everything. But what's most important to you? So relationships, at the end of the day, marriage and family, being a dad are huge. Ministry, I want ministry to always be about people. So that's where people driven comes, and relationships, friendships really matter to me. I have been known to, at my own harm, prioritize a relationship. And that, when I say my own harm, it's not like I'm beating myself up to this day, but in the moment, I'm unwilling to maybe do the thing that's natural because I want to prioritize the relationship, even if it costs me something. So I think that's kind of part of that. But what else would you add to that?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it. I think it's just I think that's what I realized when I was first doing my assessment of my values, was that I had a lot that I aspired to, but I wasn't living as if they were a priority. And so I had to really assess what are my priorities right now. And I think that's also part of core values, is that they might not all change throughout your life, but you have some centered core values that are going to stick with you, that they are the priority always. And I think you speaking to like the people driven, like you are a people person first and foremost, and I don't think that's really going to change because that is a core value of you already, and then you've named it and you've lived your life like that as well. But
Well, I think when it comes to like living according to values, that's a whole nother conversation, because then it's like, how do you keep this in front of you? And I think that's something that we can do in the future, maybe next week, is how do you actually live according to values? And just a overview though, you have to keep them in front of you. And one of the ways that I do that is when I do, especially my annual reflection, that's one of the things that I'm reviewing and I'm reflecting on, is I have all of them listed and I just go like, how did I do in this area? Like, how did I do at prioritizing this value and living according to this? And so family focused or whatever it is, I'm able to kind of cross-reference what that means to me, and is that my current reality? And then it kind of dictates how I move forward.
Yeah. So we talked about reflecting on your past experiences, identifying your priorities, but then also assessing the role models in your life. So there's people around you that are sharpening you, that you're going to for decisions or for advice or for encouragement. And it's taking some time to reflect why are those people, what do they have that is drawing you to them, what do they have that you would like to step into and to grow into. And so it's reflecting on those people that you have placed as role models in your life and considering the people that you admire. What traits or behaviors do you respect in them? And these often reflect values you hold or aspire to hold. And so if you have someone in your life that is super intentional or they're super generous, that's kind of the idea of a healthy comparison activity for you.
Yeah. I think that's a really good place to kind of hone in on your core values, because you look at somebody in your life and you go, man, like I want to be like them. I look up to them. I really value something in their life. What is it that you value in their life? And it might be an unintentional core value to them, but to you, it stands out as the most important thing. And so I think even like looking through my life, like there's people, whether it's Cal Thompson, who was youth pastor at this church here in Fargo for many years. He was always smiling, always laughing, always filled with joy. That to me maybe wasn't the only source of like why joyful became a core value, but to me, he was somebody that when I looked at him, that's who he is to me, is joy. And I want to be like him in that area. So I think like having those things. So just looking at the people in our life, our family members, people that we really look up to in different ways, and then asking what is it about them. And I think the first person to look at is Jesus, and whether it's his love or humility or obedience, sacrifice, seek how to emulate him and those values, because those could be great core values. His compassion. Like I love the story where Jesus has just learned about his cousin John the Baptist being beheaded, and he's going away to pray, and he looks over a town, he looks over the people, and basically it says that he's moved by compassion and he went and healed their sick. And like, so that story, that quality of Jesus could inspire you to say, one of my core values is compassion. Like compassion is core to who I am. And I see that in Jesus, and I want that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then also throughout this whole process is praying for guidance and keeping the Lord a part of that conversation for you as you try and figure out what is valuable to you. And part of that is referencing scripture, like you said, what is important to Jesus, what is important that we see in scripture over and over again. But it's also just understanding that the Holy Spirit can speak to you in this, and seeking his help in discerning and prioritizing your values. Prayer is essential for understanding how God wants you to live in your life, and he might have a lot to say on the subject too. So just keeping prayer a part of your journey, as well as you kind of even taking your list of what you already think your values are and being like, Lord, is there any way that these aren't core to who I am? Yeah. Or is there parts of my heart that are actually that you have gifted me in to hold value for? and whether that's hospitality or integrity or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think that's another, like you said, studying God's word and praying are kind of two of the other ways that we can get to our core values. And that prayer part is something that I don't think we can understate, is just like, God, confirm these things to me. And the activity that we're going to do, it involves a list of a bunch of words. Like one cool way to do that is just to pray and just say, God, highlight the words that really are core to me and that you want me to emulate in my life. And I do believe that he highlights those things to us. Mm-hmm. And a couple last things on this part is reflect on your calling, which is really just reflect on those, Mark Batterson says, like, what makes you pound your fist on the table, and what gets you out of bed in the morning, and what brings tears to your eyes. Like, there's those things that God grips us. And if you haven't experienced that, just continue to seek him for that. And it's not about that, but like, he wants to stir our hearts to be a part of what he's doing. And that's usually in a unique and specific way. It's not always a career. I know teachers that have a calling that isn't related solely to teaching and educating teenagers. And that just goes across all careers. So it's not a calling. It's not a career. It's something that God has really stirred in you and made you passionate about. Those things can oftentimes highlight what those things are. And then what would maybe be, this is maybe not how to find it, but I think this is kind of the long term. What's kind of the last thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the last is to revisit and adjust. You talked about how you kind of have an annual rhythm where you go through your values and assess how you've lived them out or maybe lacked intentionality with them. And so it's just being able to revisit, keep them at the front of your mind, whether that's putting them on a Post-it note on your mirror or that's putting them in the front page of your Bible. That's where I have them now. And but it's just keeping them at the forefront of what you're doing and then adjusting accordingly. So maybe at the end of the month, you're reflecting on what did I do super well, and what do I want to work on? And, we have an episode a couple weeks ago about like growth plan, actually maybe a month ago, but like the growth plan, and it's going through different areas of your life to be intentional. And so maybe one of your values is your family. And so it's like, okay, for the next month or the next couple months, how am I going to prioritize that value and really work to make that more of a value than maybe what I was doing in the past.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, to just that idea of revisiting and adjusting. Like, just, this is a working thing. And so it's okay if they change over time. You don't want everyone, if you look back at this in 5 years and realize none of them are core values, they were probably never core values. And so it's probably more of a sign that maybe you didn't do this the right way. But yeah, I think just that revisiting thing, I've usually started most journal entries, or like new journals, with rewriting my core values. And I think that's just helped me that's maybe more frequent than annually for me, because I just love journaling. So it just gives me more chances to see it. And then I have a document on my computer that just has different goals and different things. And one of those things on there is my core values. So it's just kind of always there in a place that I look often. So the last thing that we want to do, though, is actually just kind of give you an exercise. And so this is the time that maybe you want to pause the podcast and go to the show notes wherever you're listening to this. There's going to be something that just says core values activity, and download that document. And now hold that document in your hands. Oh, hey, welcome back. And put that in front of you. And then we're going to kind of walk through that. So what you're looking at is a 1-page document. And on that document, it has some instructions on the top. It has 5 steps of instructions. And then from there, it has a list, 3 columns of words. Those words range from integrity, love, peace, growth, joy, health, prosperity. I'm not going to read them all. But there's several words on this sheet of paper. And so now we're going to kind of walk through, like, this is an activity that you can do to jumpstart this whole thing. So, Megan, what is step number 1?
All right. First up, go through the list and circle or highlight words that most represent your life and mean the most to you. And I'd say don't necessarily limit yourself. Highlight anything that sticks out. You don't need to narrow it down to the 4 right now. This is just anything off the list.
Yep. And I would create some sort of level of tiering, like, again, you have to go into this not just looking for good words, because there's a lot of good words on the sheet, achievement, innovation, beauty, flexibility. Those are all good things. But really think through those lenses of your life and your experiences, role models in your life, things that you really feel are core to you. This might be 30 things though. Don't feel like if you have 30 highlighted, you're doing it wrong. This is where you just kind of say, this one jumps out, this one jumps out, this one jumps out, this one jumps out. And then that takes us to our second step. What's our second step?
Yeah. Second is add additional words that come to mind that describe you. And so if there's something that's not on this list, or there's a part of your life that you feel is already a core value, add it on the list.
Yeah. And I think some of those words that you look at, you're going to feel like one's missing. You're going to feel like, oh, this is who I am. And just ask that question, like, I am blank. Or even this is a great time to ask a friend or a family member, hey, what are 3 words that you'd use to describe me? And that kind of activity, inviting somebody else in at this stage, might jumpstart something else for you. So adding those additional words. The number 3 is to combine those words and change them to narrow it down to the 4 to 7. So this is where it gets really tricky. This is where it can take some time and some discipline, but the one thing you can do is start to cross off some. You're going to look at your list of 30 and you might even write those down on a separate sheet of paper. And now you go through it again and you highlight again. And now it's down to 20 because you're like, okay, now these ones, when I saw them all together, these ones stood out from the rest. But the best thing that you can do at this point is to start combining them. And so for me, for instance, when I did this activity in the car on the way to Montana to go skiing, I had joy, I had laughter, I had humor, I had fun, and I had happy all highlighted. And so I looked at my list and I was like, oh, that is a theme. And so instead of having all of those as core values, I drew a line through all of them. And then it ended up being, I am joyful. Like that was the word. I really felt like the biblical thing. I would say the expression of joy in my life is our house is filled with laughter and we have a lot of fun. And, like we smile. Like I was known as the smiler growing up. I was the smiley kid. And so I think that was kind of a way that worked. And there's other ones too. For me, another one is passion. And on here, there's passion, and then there's driven, and then there's ambition and achievement. And all of those words do jump out at me. But at the end of the day, it was passion. It's like, I just get really excited about things and I put my whole self into it. I don't usually go half into things, and I kind of go all in no matter what. So those are a couple. Do you have any examples for you that kind of boiled it down like that?
Yeah, I think like there's words like growth or I'm trying to read the list as I'm talking. Growth, wisdom, curiosity, those words like that is where I got curiosity from, just because I do desire to grow, but I think in order to grow, you have to remain curious. And so I kind of took it to the foundational step of what is all that going to stem from? And yeah, and I think your values can have like little sub values if you want, like they kind of fit under an umbrella. And so you're looking at a way to encompass more of them. Just because you have 7 doesn't mean you only have 7, but they can be the strongest markers for you. For sure.
So now we've combined those words, we've changed them. And again, this might not be like you're done as you're listening to this. But the next thing is that we order our values starting with what's most important. And I think this is a fun activity because it really does force you. This is where the filtering comes in. So this is where when you're making decisions down the road and you're trying to decide what to do, a job offer comes, or a move is presented, or you're in a relationship, and you're able to really go through these values. And well, first, I'm Jesus centered. So if it competes with that, it's out. Like if it is not going to allow Jesus to remain the center, so a relationship, if this person doesn't follow Jesus and they aren't like, it's a no. Like there's zero, like, oh, but I think they're really pretty and I think they're really funny. That is the core to our life, to my life. And so that doesn't pass the filter. And that's maybe harsh to somebody listening, but I think it's the wisest thing that you can do. And so having that order just kind of really puts it in priority. So for me, if I were to do Jesus-centered, people-driven, family-focused, which is opposite, what would that mean? That would mean that before I think about and caring for my people or my family, I'm maybe caught up in, oh, this is a really cool opportunity and I want to serve people and I'm a pastor, so I need to be available 24/7 and I need to like constantly, meet the needs around me. Well, first I need to meet the needs of my family and I need to pastor them. And so that's why that order matters to me. What does that look like for you? Like, what was that process like of kind of ordering them? Because you've just gone from a list of over 100 words to 7 or to 5.
Okay, well, actually, as you were talking, I was like, I don't know if I've ever intentionally ordered them. I've just like had them memorized, but I was like, that would actually be probably really helpful. So something that I should maybe be more intentional about just with my 5 that I have. But yeah, I agree. I think that there's like Jesus-centered, like you said, if it combats that, it's out. And knowing what's your non-negotiable parts of that. I also have family as one of my values too. So that's going to be more important than, I've had opportunities where I could go home on a weekend or I could attend a conference or do something like that. It's like, okay, well, that combats my family with my curiosity. Which one can I maybe come back to later on or a couple weeks later? And so knowing where you filter is going to be really beneficial, but I would admit that I don't think I have them necessarily ordered in any way. I just have them memorized. So,
and that's okay. And I think that's the thing that, as you keep going in this, like it gets more solidified. And that kind of brings us to that final point, which is define each core value to give it greater personal meaning. And when you define it, you put your own words to it. Like you could Google what does joyful mean or what does passionate mean or what does teachable mean. But this is where you actually put your own personal meaning to it. So what does it mean for Stephen Gloucester to be Jesus-centered? Well, first, it starts with Matthew 6:33. But seek first his kingdom and righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. I don't have to worry about money as much as like there's a temptation to, because he clearly says, put me first, seek me first, and I'll take care of you. And I've just seen that over and over in my life. But Jesus-centered means he's the center of everything. When I have the different rhythms and, the different areas of my life, like I want him to be at the center of all of it, not just like a segment of my life. So that's why that language is what it is. And family focused in ministry, there's a lot of times that I'm not with my family. So this weekend, as we're recording this, we have a parenting event. It's something that Taylor and I actually get to do this one together. But a lot of things in ministry, Alpha or whatever, I haven't been able to do it with them. Like I'm away from them. But family focused is I try to go home a few hours early those days. Taylor and I have a rhythm of planning for those things and getting ahead of those things. And even when I'm away for a trip or something, when I'm speaking at a camp, I'm being intentional. I bought like a Tony box, if you know what those are, parents do, but they're like, you can buy them that are like Disney characters and you put them on this box and then it plays songs and music and tells stories. Well, you can buy customized ones. So I bought a custom one and then I recorded me reading books. I recorded me telling them what they mean to me. I recorded just different things of me talking, and so that they could take that little Tony box and put it on the box when I wasn't with them. To me, as much as I'm doing something that's in maybe more of like the passion bucket, those other buckets, like that's being family focused still. Like I'm like, no, I'm away. And so while I'm away, I'm going to take care of my family in whatever possible way I can. And so I can go down the line and all of those have unique meaning to me. Authentic being really like, I am who I am. And that doesn't mean I'm, I don't want to grow, because teachable is there too. But authentic really is like, I don't feel any inclination to not be me. And when I do, I feel like I'm not only just in the wrong, but I'm competing with my values. So if I'm sensing myself trying to act a certain way because this person is a different person, like that's just not who I am. I don't want to be that person. So every one of them has a unique meaning. But anything that, have you done the definitions, or is that something that you have your own definitions for any of your values?
Yeah, I think I do. I think I have the ways that they relate to me personally, and I think I lean on the side of explaining more like, why are they important? Why is this a value for my life? And also, I'm only 23, so I think I have a long way to work to live in my values, and I've only had them for about a year defined. So, I mean, I think it's being able to explain it in your own words, and again, not taking a word that feels too hard to define for yourself. And so, if family focus is who you are, how are you going to live that out? And for me, I think when I first did the exercise, that was my kind of where I camped on, was how am I going to do this? And again, one of my biggest values is intentionality. And so I was like, how am I going to be intentional with all of this? You know, like, it can feel like you're biting off more than you can chew, being Jesus-centered and family, and still want to be teachable and curious and all of those things. But how can you practically live this out? And so, like, the Family Focused is where we started doing monthly sibling dinners. And all of my siblings live not together, across the state, a couple different states. And so once a month, we haven't done it in a while, but FaceTime, and everyone just cooks their dinner and we all eat and we just hang out on FaceTime for about an hour. But that started because I looked at my values and I was like, family focused. Okay, am I family focused even though I live long distance? And so there's also that practicality side of values, of defining them. Why are they important? How can you figure out what they are, defining them, but then it's, how do I put this into practice? How do I live according to my values?
Well, I think, and you do that well. Like, I know today earlier, and this is why one of the best things you can do is just ask somebody in your life, like, think of 3 words that describe me, or what do you think my core values are? And sometimes it's like shocking. And if there are, I mean, I don't think this is what you are trying to do, but I'm not saying you, Megan, but sometimes our core value is actually a negative quality. Like, our core value is anger. Like, the people around us, like, it seems like that's core to you, or judgmental, or, you know, whatever that is. And I think that sometimes is sobering and calls us higher and pushes us higher, convicts us. But I really do think our next episode is going to be living out our values. And so what we're going to talk about next time on the Going Somewhere podcast is not only how Megan and I live out our values, but what we would love to do is actually hear some of your values, and we just want to like workshop it with you. I know you're not here in the room with us, but what would be fun is for us to just say, all right, this is some values that people sent in. Like, this is what it could look like. And also, we're going to look at a couple of our favorite companies, because I think this helps me a lot, is looking at those companies and saying, okay, this is what their values are on their website. How do they live that out? And I think as we do that, as we look at some of those quote unquote case studies, I think it's going to help us understand, like, this core values then become core behaviors. They become core rhythms. They become core habits that are the people that we are. So come back next week. We're gonna continue kind of this little series of talking about values. Hopefully this episode is encouraging to you, and we'd love to hear it. Like we said, if you do this activity, let us know. Send us a DM, goingsomewhere.podcast on Instagram. And we just love to hear what your values are and how this experience was. And if you send us your values, you might find us talking about not necessarily who you are with your value, but just some ways that you can live these things out. And so we'd love for you to join us back next week. Share this episode with somebody that you think this would bless and benefit. And we can't wait to see you. Thanks, Megan. Amazing conversation.
Yeah. Talk to you next time.
Awesome. We're all going somewhere.
We might as well go there together.
Shout out Heidi Cunningham.
Nice.
Bye, Heidi. Bye, everybody else.